clarity comes to me in the choppy waves. The feelings and the places and the seasons change. The galaxies remain. Energy feels pulling the body to space. The angels that are accomplished in the spiritual waste. The hate that gets me just fit from my spiritual pace. Tenfold the mana when the planets are in place. In polar alignment, we're on assignment. Bodies on consignment. Return them to the circus. And what is the purpose? What is the purpose? And would you believe it? Would you believe it if you knew what you were for? And how you became so informed. Bodies of info performing such miracles. I am a miracle made up of particles. And in this existence I'll stay persistent. And I'll make a difference. And I will have lived.
As we look out to the ocean ahead of us there, it's kind of interesting to think of the first people who crossed that ocean making it here to the Hawaiian Islands. It's thought that they were Marquesan fishermen who were blown off course and were lucky enough to make landfall here. They were also smart enough to be able to retrace their steps back to the Marquesas Islands to get enough people to establish a small population, and that happened sometime around 2,500 years ago. They lived here in relative seclusion until the next wave of people came. Those people came from Kahiki, or what we know as Tahiti, and their journey was a little bit more purposeful. After 200 generations of living only on islands, they had no memory of what it was like to live on a continental landmass. So in their worldview, they viewed that the whole world was nothing but a great ocean punctuated with islands. And every island that they lived on at night had a star that went over the top of it, so they reasoned that every star must have an island under it. And with a great spirit of adventure, they launched out into the big blue looking for those innumerable islands. Once in a while, they were lucky enough to find them, but for the most part, many of the people on those journeys probably perished at sea from dehydration or starvation. The ones that were lucky enough to find the big island, though, must have been pretty stoked about it. They found there was a star that went over the top of it at night, which they called Hoku Lea. Hoku means star, Lea means glad or happy, so it's the happy star. We know it as Arcturus, or the bear star. It's a pretty easy star to find in the night sky if you know where the Big Dipper is. All you have to do is just follow the handle away from the cup, double the distance of the handle, and you'll find a big orange star, and that's Hoku Lea. When you get back home, you can look up in the night sky and look at that star and think of Hawaii and find your way back. This is Papalua Falls. This comes down about 1,900 feet in a series of falls.
And the day that I do wake up and transcend holy makeup, I am capable, I am powerful. The day that I do wake up and transcend holy makeup, I am on my way to a different place. Da, 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 da. I'm not a leader, just a creature seeking the features of a teacher. Where do you follow when you lead? I'm the mysterious ways of nature and I'm into it. Changing management. And there are various ways to conquer this monotonous metropolis. My stubbornness is bottomless, my feelings is talking shit and I'm wide awake. And I'm taking names. I'm not a leader, just a creature seeking the features of a teacher. Where do you follow when you lead? I'm the mysterious ways of nature and I'm into it. I'm into it, changing management. And there are various ways to conquer this monotonous metropolis. My stubbornness is bottomless, my feelings is talking shit and I'm wide awake. And I'm taking names. And there are various ways to conquer this monotonous metropolis. My stubbornness is bottomless, my feelings is talking shit and I'm wide awake. And I'm taking names. Do you speak to me like you speak to God? All of the love and understanding between the Father and the Son. Do you believe?
To our left you can see Wailau Valley. These valleys used to be very populated and cultivated. They used to grow a lot of taro back there, which is a root vegetable that they make poi from, which I think is pretty tasty, but most people aren't too fond of it. It's not uncommon to see a bumper sticker around town that says poi happens. That's how most people feel about it. Anyway, it's quite nutritious. It's about 18% protein, very high in vitamins A, C, B6, B12, and iron. You can eat the leaves, the stems, and the roots. You just have to cook it all really well first because it's laden with calcium oxalate, which is a toxin that'll ruin your day if you don't. Out in the distance ahead of us there you can see that peninsula of land. That's Kalaupapa. You may have read about that or heard about that. That's where the victims of Hansen's disease or leprosy were exiled in the 1800s. They used to be taken there by the boatload and thrown overboard and made to swim to shore through the breakers. If they survived that ordeal, they were left to fend for themselves, trapped by the cliffs. That started in 1866, and after about 3 years of that happening, a Catholic priest by the name of Father Damien showed up. He was their advocate, helped them organize the community, and cared for them. And he was recently canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church for his efforts with the lepers of Molokai, as was the Catholic nun who assisted him, Sister Marianne Cope. On these gray cliffs are some interesting plants called Bringhamia and Cygnus. There are only about 350 of them left on the planet. And the reason they're still on these cliffs is because they're out of range of the goats that would otherwise gobble them up. The one problem that the Bringhamia and Cygnus still face is that their native pollinator, a particular insect, is extinct. So the only way that they get pollinated anymore is by some botanists from the University of Hawaii who will rappel down those cliffs and actually hand pollinate those plants. So it's one of those extreme sports that doesn't make it into a Red Bull commercial, just wacky scientists doing their job. They're kind of the badasses about me. Everybody still doing good with the turns? Yeah. But this mountain to our right has one of the most intact and pristine sections of native Hawaiian forest left in Hawaii on it. That's because it's surrounded by all this steep terrain that keeps the animals out. The one problem this area still faces is the encroachment of non-native plant species like the strawberry guavas and others. And it's the introduction of all these non-native species that's been sort of the plight of the Hawaiian Islands. These islands are the most remote islands on the planet. And the plants and animals that evolved here evolved in isolation over time. And it's thought that about once every 20,000 years a plant would make landfall here. It would take about another 150,000 years to establish a viable population. And then over time, those species would become new species altogether. When Western colonists first arrived here, there were about 1,300 endemic plant species found nowhere else on Earth. Today we're down to about 600. So the Hawaiian Islands have the unfortunate distinction of having one of the highest rates of extinction of plants and animals on the planet. In fact, 90% of the bird species here went extinct with the introduction of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes were introduced through the malicious act of a British naval captain who was having a problem with one of the local chiefs in Oahu. He thought it would be an irritant to that chief to have mosquitoes in his neighborhood. So he released his contaminated water supplies from his ship into the streams in that chief's territory. Those mosquitoes multiplied rather quickly and spread throughout the Hawaiian Islands. Had they only been an irritant to the humans, that would have been bad enough. But unfortunately, they also carried avian malaria, which wiped out 90% of the bird species. That in turn had a cascade effect through the ecosystem, because those birds are the seed distributors and the pollinators. So when they went extinct, the plants that relied on them for those functions also diminished in number or went extinct. So our challenge today is to preserve the 10% of the bird species we have left and the 10% of the forests we have left.